All right. First of all, a disclaimer. Force and Destiny is a Star Wars role-playing game. We are not associated with Disney or with Star Wars. We are reviewing this. We are reviewing the system, and we are playing it, and we love it. All right. Fantasy Flight. It sounds like they are going over a bit of a regime change right now. So it can be kind of hard to find these books. And when you do find them, there are so many. There are 3 core rule books, and there are tons of modules, tons of add-ons. I want to tell everyone right now, you only need 1 core rule book to get started. If you want to do Jedi, you should be playing Force and Destiny like us. If you would rather go the smuggler route, then you should grab Edge of the Empire. It's very Outer Rim focused, and it has all of those fun Boba Fett, Mandalorian type storylines inside of there. Lots of good smuggling and bounty hunting. And then if you want to play a stormtrooper, part of the Empire, or if you want to be part of the Rebellion, you should grab Age of Rebellion. And that is very war-centric. It has all of the big machines in the core core rule book, and it is a great rule book as well. But you only need to pick one of those. These books can get expensive, so don't throw yourself into a world of debt because you want the entire set. And it will be hard to find the entire set. So grab a core rulebook, and then if you have players that are really interested in, say, bounty hunting, you can grab the Bounty Hunters add-on. If you have players that are very interested in being mystics and following the dark side of the Force, there is a book for that. So you can definitely branch out, but I would say grab a core rulebook and get a feel of the game before you buy all the add-ons. The other thing you're going to need to get started is the dice. The Star Wars role-playing game has a very strange set of dice. It takes a little getting used to, but it is very important to how the game is played. You can, there are tables to use with using your normal D12s and your normal D8s, but I would recommend getting the dice if possible, and if not, then grab an app. There are a few good apps out there. I think there's one from Fantasy Flight Games that has the dice on it, so go out there and grab the dice app, because the books are written with the dice in mind. So when it tells you to roll purple dice and red dice and green dice, you know which one to pick up. All right, well, that should be enough to get you started. The great thing about Force and Destiny as well, and these other Fantasy Flight Star Wars games, are you don't necessarily need a board with minis on it. I love minis. I love making terrain. So there's going to be a lot of Instagram posts and blog posts over the next few weeks where I'm showing my painting and the process of making all of this terrain. But it is made so that you can play it without any minis. You can do it just with a couple pieces of paper and the dice and the rule book if you so desire. Okay, and the main piece of paper that you are going to want out in front of you is your character sheet. Just like most role-playing games, there is a character sheet specifically made for Force and Destiny. Okay, the Age of the Empire and the Age of Rebellion and Edge of the Empire systems have slightly different character sheets. You can get away with taking a character from one campaign to the next, but there are 1 or 2 differences. We're not going to go over those today, but we are going to go over what is on this sheet. So we have character name, species, career. Pretty self-explanatory things you'll see on other RPGs. But then you have a specialization. So within a career, you're going to have specialization trees that you buy with experience points, and you're going to specialize, becoming a better Force user in one certain aspect. Yes, go ahead.
So one thing to also note with this game is that there's no such thing as levels in this game.
Yes.
This
It's one of the things I like about this game.
Yeah, I do really like it because everything runs off of experience points. So was it end of every session?
Yeah, every session, the players should get somewhere between 15 and 30, I think is what the rule book says.
Okay, independent on what happens in there, what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gives the GM a way to reward the players for interacting and for being outgoing and thinking outside the box.
So then when you're starting with your character, you don't have like a class that you're going into where you get automatic levels or automatic something. Everything that you have there, you have to purchase with a starting experience point.
Yes.
Ranging, was it about 100 roughly?
Yeah, so most species start with 100, give or take 10 points. Some species that have like extra strength or some like extra mental abilities might start out with 80 or 90. Some that are a little bit weaker might start with 110. It depends on what species you want to start with.
Okay, so I think actually now is probably a good time to go into some of like the core stats.
Yes.
So we have brawn, agility, intellect, cunning, willpower, and presence. And already just looking at this, I think it's kind of cool that there's only 2 physical stats and the rest of them are mental. Would you mind going into that?
Yeah, definitely. So brawn is what it sounds like. It is the strength stat. It is the one that factors into your soak value, and
soak functions like damage reduction did in Fallout.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of your armor type stat. And then you have your agility, which is what it sounds like, right? Like a lot of role-playing games, it is what is tied to using ranged weapons. And it's also what you use to jump over, under, and through things. Right?
So then with intellect, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so intellect's going to be more of the book learning type stats, right? If you have a good intellect, you'll know when you're doing lore checks or you're doing checks on certain planets, you'll have core worlds versus outer worlds checks, and those all come from your intellect. Now, that is different from cunning, and cunning is more of the deception side of things, more of the skullduggery, if you will. Your streetwise checks, your survival checks, all of those kind of things are going to come through your cunning stat. And then we've got our willpower. All right. Willpower is kind of an interesting one. It links mostly to your discipline. How headstrong are you? It ties into your vigilance stat, which is one of the 2 initiative stats. Vigilance and cool is the other one. And yeah, willpower is used mostly for those discipline checks, and those are very important in Force and Destiny because it is always discipline versus fear checks. And so when you see the Death Star and that sense of dread comes over you, you're going to run a discipline check versus fear, and those can end up giving your character conflict, which eventually leads to the dark side, right? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, that whole thing that Yoda says. And
that so conflict is something we'll talk about a little bit later, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. And then finally we have presence, and presence is your charm. Presence is your cool. Presence is your negotiation stat. All of those things tie into your presence.
Awesome. And there's a whole bunch of skills. I don't think we'll get into them too much here. But
I can fly down this list.
Okay,
Let's do it. So astrogation is using star maps and going from system to system. That is long distance navigation. All right, athletics is what it sounds like, jumping over things. Charm is your, seducing people. You're being charming. You're being the Han Solo type, or even better, Lando Calrissian.
True.
Man, Childish Gambino or Donald Glover did a great job in the Solo movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
Really?
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I liked it. A lot of people said it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie because it focused on the smuggling aspect versus like Jedi or the fight against the Empire.
Yeah, space wizards and all that.
Yeah, all that stuff that we're definitely going to get into. But I had a good time. I liked it. All right, and then we have our coercion. Again, one of those I'm going to talk you into something type skills. We've got our computers, which is what it sounds like, hacking, robotics, that kind of stuff. And then cool. Now, cool is an important one because, like I said earlier, it's one of your initiative stats. If you are launching a ambush on someone, if you are expecting a fight to happen, you're going to be using the cool stat for your initiative. All right. And then vigilance is the other half of that. If you get ambushed, if you are not expecting a fight, then you are going to be using the vigilance stat. All right. Then we have coordination. That's another agility linked one. Deception is what it sounds like, linked to cunning, trying to deceive people. Discipline is that very important one to stave off evil. Those Jedi have to be very focused, very controlled, very disciplined. Leadership, if you want to inspire the people around you, you should put some points into leadership, right? That will be role played out. Misty's going to be our Jedi Master leading our Padawan, so I hope that she uses that skill a good bit. Maybe she's one of the leaders that yells at people. I don't know if she'd be using leadership or discipline or what, but we'll find out.
It'll be interesting to see.
I'm excited to see her leadership style. And then we have mechanics. Now, mechanics is not the same as computers. Mechanics is going to be working on ships, working on bigger pieces of machinery, whereas computers would be more of your droids and smaller computers.
Probably more like a hardware versus software kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to look at it. Medicine check, just like most games, that's what you use to heal each other. Negotiation, again, you're not quite charming the person, you're not really coercing them, you are instead negotiating. You're having more of a sit down.
Maybe using more logic than anything else.
Yeah, more of like, intellectual battle of the wills type thing. All right, and then we have perception. It's what it sounds like. Very, very heavily used in Pathfinder and D&D, but I would say not as much in Star Wars, right? You're not necessarily going through the woods like, oh, I'm going to roll for perception. It's more, situations are thrust upon you or you are ambushing other people. Then we have piloting planetary, and so that is within the atmosphere. You are piloting. This is what you can use for speeders, getting spaceships up and out of the atmosphere. And then you have piloting space, which is everything else. All right. And that is separate from astrogation because astrogation is using the star maps. You don't have to be good at using the map to be the one driving, right?
Right. So it's a difference of maybe like trying to plot a path versus physically like flying the ship. And I mean, would you say one example of like piloting space would be trying to navigate around some gravitational anomalies?
Yeah, definitely. And that is what astromech droids are made for. So R2-D2 is an astromech droid, right? So his whole job is to hook into starships and do those hard computational things to get them through hyperspace without running into any stars or any gravity wells.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did not know that.
Yeah, they're kind of a do-it-all for the starship. They also do the little maintenance things. That's why he has all those tools. And yeah. And if you notice, most Jedis have some sort of place to put an astromech.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like
on their
Anakin's
ships.
and Obi-Wan's had
Yeah.
theirs, yeah.
R2D2 and R4, that's where they shine, is in the astrogation, not necessarily the piloting.
Unless you're R2D2, and then you just shine everywhere.
Yeah, he does everything,
he
man.
really does.
All right. Next, we have our resilience, and that is a brawn skill. So this is your physical resilience. If you're out in the elements, say you're out on Hoth, then you're going to be rolling resilience checks to see if you freeze to death before you find a tauntaun to dive into. All right, skullduggery. This one was actually a new word to me when I first saw it. It is kind of that sleight of hand is what you want to think. Any of your lockpick checks, any of your pickpocketing type checks are going to be skullduggery.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So the skullduggery would be like doing all of the really criminal stuff, but streetwise is knowing about the criminal stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So streetwise, streetwise is exactly that. Finding black markets, being able to talk to people that are in the underworld without, pissing off a hut or getting shot in the bar. That kind of thing is
Han
going to
shot
be.
first.
Han did shoot first. You are totally right. I will fight anyone that says different. Stealth is what it sounds like. You're sneaking around. You're being stealthy. That's what you're going to be rolling. And then we have survival, and that is tied to your cunning. So in Star Wars, yes, we do have our like jungle type areas where you're trying to survive, but also if your spaceship breaks down and you're losing oxygen, how survival minded are you? Are you going to be able to pair that with like a mechanics check to find oxygen somewhere else in the ship? Survival, like I said, can be very constrained to forests, which we are going to see a lot of forest planets in this season, but I am also going to try and weave that into some starship type things. And then finally, in our generic skills is vigilance. I already touched on that. It's the initiative skill if someone gets the drop on you.
So then after that, there's the combat skills, and we have brawl, which is tied to brawn. Gunnery, that would be firing like large weapons or like ship-based weapons.
Yes, exactly.
Tied to agility. We have the lightsaber, which is tied to brawn.
Yes, and that's an interesting one. With the lightsaber skill, you can make an argument that it should be agility. You can make an argument that, well, I have studied lightsaber form, so it should be intellect. And there are ways to use your specialization trees to use any one of your abilities as your lightsaber ability. You do have to pay for that with the experience points, but it is available to you to use any one of your abilities, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that also kind of like represents that I've trained in the lightsaber, I've studied the lightsaber. We'll prove it by spending the experience points.
Yes, exactly.
After that is melee, which is also a brawn check. So the difference being brawn would be fisticuffs, while then
Brawl, yes.
melee would be like knives or other melee weapons. And then you have ranged light and ranged heavy. I think ranged light would be like standard blasters, and ranged heavy would be like rocket launchers?
Yeah, it would be rocket launchers. A lot of your like longer rifles will be ranged heavy.
Okay. After that, it is knowledge skills. All of these are intellect based. There's core worlds knowledge, education, lore, outer rim, underworld, and xenealogy. I think all of those are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. If we have anyone that's newer to Star Wars, you have your core worlds, which are the center of the galaxy, the core, right? That's where most of the civilization is.
Think like Coruscant.
Yeah, Coruscant and politicians and senators, they will be the ones that you know about if you are core worlds intellectual. And then you have your outer rim, which is more of the Tatooine, more of the Hut cartels and all of that craziness happening on the outer fringes of civilization.
So beyond that, on this like first page of the character sheet, we already talked a little bit about the soak value acting as DR. Then there is your wounds threshold. That is your hit points.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there is a strain threshold. Now that's a new one.
Yeah, so that's another thing that I like about the Star Wars system. If you get stunned, you aren't necessarily taking wounds, but you are out of the fight for a little bit. And that is, that will be reflected in your strain threshold. And then if that gets all the way down to 0, then you are effectively so stressed that you are not able to fight anymore. You are freaking out. You are unconscious. For whatever reason, you are mentally unable to move on, even though you still have some wounds left.
So with strain, then, can you only take strain damage from like stun weapons?
So there is an option on a lot of melee weapons to hit using strain or wounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is that the only way that you can lose strain, or?
No. So yeah, there's a lot of combat ways to lose strain. There's some force powers that take strain from people. If you roll badly, it can take strain away from you. If you roll well, you can get some strain back. And we'll get into dice here in a second.
Okay. And I think it also does say somewhere in the, well, maybe for just some things, like you can spend strain to activate an ability or something.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That'll be kind of cool, the back and forth with that all.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see, on the second page.
Ooh, before you get there, Force and Destiny has one box that the other sheets in the other Star Wars games doesn't have, is the Force rating box next to your name up at the top of the first page. And that Force rating is how many Force die you are able to roll at any one time. And we'll get into the dice later.
Okay. So then after that, there's motivations. That's kind of like more character backstory stuff, right?
Yeah. So if you are listening to this, I assume that you really like these rules and like to know the minutia and maybe want to DM or GM this game. So if you want to be the game master, Star Wars is very good about making your characters flesh out their backstories. So their motivations are going to be, they want the downfall of the Republic or the Empire. They are motivated by family. Are they motivated by wealth and becoming rich? And there is a whole section inside the book that helps your players walk through what are their actual motivations for being out adventuring. And I love the system for that.
And then further on, it says morality. So there is emotional strength and emotional weakness, and then there's also conflict and morality. So emotional strength and emotional weakness, that's again more like character-based things, right?
Yes, yeah. And the book does have suggestions. You can have arrogance and pride. Like, I am proud of what we are doing as Jedi, but sometimes I'm also arrogant because of that and think that other people are beneath me because they aren't Jedi. And so that emotional strength and emotional weakness gives, again, the GM something to work with and try and trigger those kind of emotions somewhere within the session, within the season, and give them an opportunity to show those characteristics in their player character. And then there is conflict and morality. So conflict, yes. You already mentioned, right? That's going to be how many times did you use the dark side while you were fighting, or did you do an evil act? Did you do a good act? Yeah.
It's just a place to hold that until it affects your morality.
Yes, and this is one that is different in the Force and Destiny game versus the Age of Rebellion and Edge of the Empire games, because the Jedi are very focused on the inner conflict. They're very focused on their emotions. And so you should be giving your players options to go to the dark side. You should be giving them conflict, all sorts of situations where there is a moral gray area and they are forced to make a decision, right? And then at the end of the session, you'll roll a d10 and you will subtract that conflict from the d10. And if it gets into the negative, they are slipping to the dark side. And if it stays positive and adds to it, they are becoming more of a light side paragon, just very devoted to being on the light side of the force. So there should be a little bit of give and take there if your characters want to stay on the light side. Maybe you throw some curveballs at them, right?
Yeah, that sounds like it's a lot of fun for the GM.
It is.
So then after that, it is kind of like a place to hold your weapons and armor, personal gear, some of the talents and special abilities that you have
Yes.
based on the race that you are. You have different ones, which we'll probably be getting more into when we talk about our characters.
Yeah. One thing I would like to point out here is they have a spot to put the page number, and I love that because...
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, because sometimes it is a headache to write out the entire special ability, and you forget to write a number or a word in there, and then you have to go look it up anyway. So they have a spot to put the page number. It's real easy to flip to it and be like, nope, this is what the rule book says. Here it is. Rules lawyer, do you go away?
Yeah, or also just if you're straight up confused
Yeah.
or maybe forgot about what that thing does, you have the page number now to just easily flip to it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite parts about these sheets.
And then last thing is a list for force powers, which we'll probably also be getting into later.
Yes, yeah. It should be towards the end of session 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So next, let's talk about our dice. Force and Destiny has a very unique dice system. All right. And it can be kind of daunting getting started because there are a lot of new symbols to get used to. So if you have these, feel free to follow along. There are the green die. A green die has a couple of blanks. It has a blank side. Whoop! I just dropped it. It has these bursting bomb symbols, which are your successes. And so if you are trying to shoot something or you are trying to deceive someone or whatever, you want to see a lot of these bursting success symbols. All right. And then the other symbol on this die is, I don't know, what do you call that? It's like kind of some wings.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it could be a symbol for, I don't know, because it's not like a republic symbol. It's not like...
Yeah, I'm going to have to go look that up.
Yeah, you can Google what these symbols are, but this is actually to denote advantage.
Yes.
And with advantage, there's actually a sheet that we have that you can find what... Oh, there it is. Thank you. So you can actually spend advantage to do several different things. Recovering strain, for instance, or adding a die that we're going to be talking about later to someone's check to help them out, or adding like one of the penalty die to the enemy's check to give them, a penalty for something.
Yeah,
and there's all sorts of stuff.
And a lot of weapons have a number of advantage dice associated with them to hit a critical number, right? For example, you have your holdout blaster. You have a crit of 4, so you would need 4 of those advantages to activate the critical, and then you can roll on the critical injury table and your bad guy gets wrecked. All right, so success and advantage on the green die, and The other die that you want to be rolling is the yellow die, and it has a lot of the same symbols. It has the bursting bombs, it has the wings, for lack of a better word, and then it has this lightsaber inside of a circle, and that is your triumph. That is the best of the best as far as the symbols go. It counts as one success and one advantage, but there are also certain skills that activate just because you got a triumph, right? And when you get one of those, you can argue with the DM that you can do whatever you want.
And how you end up like compiling this dice pool is you look at your ranks in a skill, and we look at your stat and like the main characteristics. So for instance, let's say that I have a brawn of 2 and I have a brawl, the melee attack skill, with 1 rank in it. At that point, you would assemble your dice pool. So given that I have 2 brawn, that would mean that I would normally get 2 green die for that skill. However, because I have a rank in brawl, you do what's kind of called upgrade the die.
Yes.
So I change out one of those green die for a yellow die.
Yes. Yeah, and technically these are called ability and proficiency die. So the yellow die is showing that you are more proficient than your average person in it. But we're going to refer to them by their colors most of the time because
it's just easier.
Yeah, it's what's in front of us.
Yeah, so, and that also means, though, if I had 2 ranks in Brawl, I would be rolling 2 yellow die because I had 2 Brawl and then 2 ranks, upgrade 2 different die, ta-da.
Yeah, and you have that potential to get 2 triumphs. You have that potential, you have a lot more successes and advantages on the yellow die, so it is always better to upgrade them when possible.
And one other thing to note, though, is if my skill ranks, for instance, go higher than my characteristic, at that point, either way, you just take whichever one has the higher number. So if I had 5 ranks in Brawl, for instance, and only a 2 in Brawn, you would have 5 green die from the ranks in Brawl, and then you would upgrade 2 of them because of your Brawn stat.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So either way that you do it, you start with grabbing green die equal to the higher rank, and then you upgrade based on the lesser rank.
Yes.
It'll make a lot more sense as we move along.
Yeah, definitely. And you are always going to be rolling these opposed to other dice. There is the possibility of rolling just green and yellow dice, but at that point you're probably going to succeed, so why roll it? The counter to our green and yellow dice are our purple and red dice. So with the purple die, you have these pointy triangle failures. All right, the failures are your subtractions from the successes, and if you have more failures than successes, you fail. All right, and then the other one is this imperial looking circle. All right.
Yeah, I thought that this was actually like the Empire symbol, but yeah, it's a little different.
No, I think it's supposed to be the window that's behind the Emperor.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
That works. It's canon in our game.
Yeah, or maybe the TIE Fighter window.
It does look very TIE Fighter-y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are your disadvantages. So it is possible to roll a success with disadvantage, and that really adds to the narrative structure of this game. I really enjoy it. I'll get back into that in a second. Then finally, on the red die, we have a triangle inside of that circle. It is the failure and the disadvantage symbols together, and that is called a despair. And the despair is just like the Jedi symbol with the triumph, is 1 disadvantage and 1 and 1 failure. but it will activate all sorts of bad things for the characters. They'll have weapons break. They will have extra enemies show up. There are all sorts of things that despair could influence.
So just for layman's terms, the green die are the good version, and the purple die are the bad version. And then the counterpart to the yellow die is the red die.
Yes. And then we have our boost and our setback die. So they are blue and black, respectively. And these are usually for environmental type things. If you want to give a little boost to your characters, say they're being cheered on by the crowd, you can throw them a blue die. A lot of the ways to spend advantage is to give other people in your party those blue boost die, and they aren't as good as a green or a yellow, but they do help. And then the counterpoint to that is the setback die, and they are black, and they have that failure and that disadvantage symbol on them, and they do the exact opposite. Say dust gets kicked up and it's hard to shoot. You throw a couple of black die in there. If a planet has heavier gravity, you can add black die.
Ooh.
Yeah, I read that the other day. You can add black die to every agility check while they are on that planet.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So the other really weird thing, though, is that you roll like the positive die and the negative die in one dice pool that the character ends up rolling.
Yes.
And then you would roll for your guys the same kind of a thing. So, for instance, if I'm shooting with my blaster at a person, I would try and figure out my dice pool, grab the green and yellow die that I need.
And I would tell you what the purple and red die were. If you were at a certain range, say you are, say you are at medium range, you're going to need 2 purple die. And then if I think this is a harder enemy, all of the stat blocks will say if they have extra defense. Then I would tell you to upgrade one of those purple to a red, and dust is being kicked up, so throw black in there as well. And so you are then potentially rolling almost every die available to you.
And then I would tally it up as to the total number of successes and the total number of advantages or disadvantages, because they do cancel each other out.
Yes.
So that's very unique, because I don't think any other game system, to my knowledge, has you roll to... Like, you're not trying to hit a target number or something like an armor class. You're not trying to get a certain number of successes. It's you have the... Like, you're rolling to see how many times you fail or how many times you succeed, and then see which one wins out.
Yeah, I've heard this is similar to the Genesis system, but
I've never heard of that.
But I haven't played it. Yeah. If you have, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want us to play something based off the Genesis system, let us know, because I'm all about learning new ones.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then finally, we have our white force die. All right. The force die are different than all of the other ones, and they have white circles and they have black circles. And you have your light side, your dark side, right? So a character rolling the force die, as long as something comes up, and there is something on every side of the die, they can spend it. Okay, so say a light side user rolls 2 dark side points. They can spend a destiny point, or eventually they can spend strain, and they can still use that. They can dive into their darker emotions and use the force still to move whatever they want, hurt people, throw things around, mess with people's minds.
And there's also, like, with some of the force powers, if you use dark side points, it does extra stuff.
Yes, and so that's always a temptation for your players, especially the ones that want to deal a lot of damage, because the dark side's all about hurting people. It's all about, being angry.
Yeah.
And then if they get the light side points, they can spend them without any of that, overhead.
And also, if they use a dark side point, that adds to their conflict, which has to get resolved at the end of the session.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of times when, we want to use the Force, but you have to make that decision.
And it's also like the environment that they're in. Like, if, for instance, using this Force power would save one of your companions,
Ooh, yeah.
you might just have to dive in just to make sure that they don't die, but that's going to have consequences.
Yeah, you're diving into your emotions. You're afraid to lose them, and so you're pulling them out of whatever bad situation.
Man, being a Jedi is rough.
It is. It is. Yeah, I'm real excited to get started. Yeah, and then the other way we use the Force die is right at the beginning of every session, each player rolls a die, and that number gets tallied up, and we get light side and dark side points. And there are little icons that come with the dice that you flip over. There's just a light side with the Jedi symbol and a dark side with the Sith symbol, and you flip them over as your players use them. And then as more and more dark side points are accumulated, then the GM can start using the dark side points to make problems for the player characters, and they come in handy as the GM. I very much enjoy this narrative system.
Is there anything else that you wanted to hit?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah, as we get into weapons and item qualities, we'll do those as they come up.
Yeah, I know that this whole chunk is, really chunky, but it will make sense as we begin playing the game. We just wanted to get these absolute basics out first, so that then when we say, oh, I got, 3 failures but 5 advantage, now you kind of know how that is coming about and what that actually means.
Yeah, definitely. And if you are a lost GM, I hope this helps you. I know I was when I started using the system, but it's very smooth once you get running. I really like it. Cool. Well, with no further ado, let's hear about the player characters. All right, so we're going to start off talking about everyone's Star Wars experience. One of my first memories as a kid is my little brother watching Attack of the Clones on repeat. We had the DVD and it got worn out. We watched that over and over again to the point where I hated it. Then I learned to love it. Attack of the Clones is probably my favorite Star Wars movie to date, because of all the cool backstory, because of the clones themselves. I thought that was a really cool, really cool twist. And I love Star Wars now. I read the books. I've watched all the movies. I'm most of the way through all of the animated series. It is a very wide universe. There's lots of stuff out there. And as far as backstory, I'm going to ask you guys to give some character backstory, but I'm going to give you some kind of historical backstory that you'll need to know as characters. We are going to be playing 6,900 years before A New Hope. All right. Many, many years before. And part of the reason we're doing that is because there isn't much lore about it. And so we can do what we want, and we don't have to worry about accidentally killing off Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader and disrupting the multiverse or whatever, right? So we are going to be starting right after the 100 Years' War. So right around 7,000 before the Battle of Yavin, BBY, there was a divide among the Jedi where there were many of them that went to the dark side. There were fallen Jedi, and there was this huge battle, and half of the Order got expelled and sent away. All right. You as characters do not know where they got sent. All right. And this has left the Jedi Order pretty fractured. They need more masters. They don't have enough for all of the Padawans. And that is where you all come in. You have been raised in the Jedi Temple to some extent, and you are just graduating, and this war's ended. All right? So let's go around the table, talk a little bit about your Star Wars experience, and then tell us some backstory on your character. So, Damien.
Yeah. So I remember I was a young child, and I was getting ready for bed. And then my dad came up and said, "Hey, get dressed. We're going to the premiere of Revenge of the Sith." So I got to watch that in theaters past bedtime. So I was pretty stoked about that.
Nice.
As far as Star Wars experience goes, I've probably binge watched the original 6 movies at least 7 or 8 times. I got to watch what is number 7 called again?
The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens. I got to watch Force Awakens like when it came out, which was pretty cool, I guess. But in my head canon, 7, 8, and 9 don't exist. Not going to go much more into that. But I do really like The Mandalorian. I've been watching Star Wars Clone Wars, and it's just the best. So many war crimes.
Right?
So many.
Surprisingly dark for a kid's cartoon.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a kid's cartoon.
I totally agree.
But all the better for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not as big into Star Wars like as you are. But,
That's okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So for character though, he has a Kel Dor, which is what Plo Koon is from Star Wars Clone Wars. His name is Kyrus Drone.
And what do Keldor look like?
So Kel Dor, they are like this orange-skinned kind of a creature with 4 fingers, and like one of their fingers has like a giant claw on it. They have to wear breathing masks because oxygen is toxic to them. So you'll see them with like a breathing mask and some kind of like covering over their eyes to make sure that they don't fucking die while going and doing Jedi stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
As far as like backstory stuff goes, Kyrus Drone was a child who was born with silver eyes, which with Kel Dor, that means that they are force sensitive. And his parents were both part of what's called the Baron Do, which is like the Kel Dor sages. It's what the Kel Dor before the Jedi contacted them, what Kel Dor force sensitive people went to. And then he grew up in that society and realized that it wasn't all that he felt he was destined for. It was a lot of kind of like sitting around, foreseeing, and what he will jokingly call just telling the weather. They do a lot of really important stuff like guiding government officials and everything, but they also do sit around and like give warnings about incoming storms and things like that wreak havoc on their planet. Yeah, but then he thought that wasn't really for him, so he left without telling his parents and joined the Jedi.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah, I'm excited to see where your character goes. Now, Misty, what is your Star Wars experience?
I love Star Wars with all my heart.
Nerd.
I don't even care. It's my favorite thing in this entire world. The first memory that I have of Star Wars is my dad giving me the original trilogy in the like anniversary edition box set. And it wasn't mine, but I claimed it as mine. He basically was giving it to show me that he bought it. And I was like, oh, you got these for me? And he was like, sure. But I went to see The Phantom Menace with my parents when I was a kid. And my parents tell the story. I don't remember any of this, but they tell the story about how I was like, I think around like 2 or 3 at the time, and I went to this place called Media Play, kind of like a Blockbuster, and I was talking with all of the workers about the Phantom Menace and like was swapping fan theories with them as like a 3-year-old. Like, I love Star Wars. Like, it is my favorite thing. I definitely am not so immersed in it that I've delved into what are now legends or anything like that. Like, I just always had this crazy obsession with the movies and like the characters in them. One time at Salt Lake Comic-Con, I met Ray Park, and he is the character actor who plays Darth Maul. Have a super awkward picture with him where I am like literally geeking out. Like, it is the most awkward picture. We'll post it to Instagram for your viewing pleasure because it is awful. But like, I literally was like hyperventilating, and he was like, how are you guys doing? Like, thanks for coming by. Like, he was so sweet. And I was like, hello, hi, how are you? Like, sweating profusely. Like, I literally felt so bad. He put his arm around me to take this picture, and I genuinely like teared up. Like, obsessed. Like, the way that people get about Harry Potter, but like Star Wars instead. Yeah, like it's my favorite. I could talk about this forever, so I'm gonna stop.
All right. Yeah. Tell us about your character.
So my character is Master Jedi Adetta Fawn, and she is she's going to be the master for the Padawans, the rest of the Padawans at the table. She is a Togruta, which is the same species as Ahsoka Tano.
And for those that don't know what that looks like.
Oh man.
Yeah,
well,
it's
then
a tough
you
one.
need to get on that because she's the best. They are humanoid creatures with typically reddish skin, and then they have what are called montrails, which are basically like horns, and those horns fall into almost like a tentacle-ish looking braid type thing, and that's what their hair is. Instead of having like human hair, they have these like horns and little braid tail thing, and that is something that they use for like echolocation and like hearing, and they're well, it's different for Twi'lek, but we'll get into that.
I'm still gonna know that, though.
Yeah, they're really cool. So typically they try to like keep them exposed so that they can hear better, and I believe it helps with their balance as well. It's really cool. They're cool creatures, but So their skin is red, right? And then their montrails usually have like a white and blue pattern. And this varies a lot, depending on the species that they might have had kids with, or the different planets that they might have grown up on. But the typical Togruta is red skinned with blue and white stripes on their head tails. And then they have these cool markings on their skin usually that are just birthmarks. Sometimes they'll be tattoos, but most of the time they're just really cool birthmarks. And it just helps them blend in with the planet of Shili. I don't ever know how to say it, if I'm being honest.
Chile sounds right to me.
It's pretty cold there.
Yeah, Wesley knows. But there's like this really cool red and white grass there, and so it helps them blend in because they're hunters by nature.
Now, with them being hunters, a lot of Togruta have a specific headdress. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna make me talk about their teeth, but
Wait, I'm really curious now.
They're carnivorous, so they have really sharp, pointy, scary teeth.
Oh.
I love them. Yeah, they're really freaky.
Yeah.
But the headdress. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. The headdress that Joseph is mentioning is from an animal on Shili. It's called the Ackle. And basically, the Togruta have this tradition of sending out their kind of like coming of age-esque little Togrutas on like a singular mission to go kill an Ackle. And they have to kill it by themselves. That's the rule. But if they kill it, which the if is a big if, usually it kills them. But if they kill it, then they get to wear their teeth. And they end up putting it as like a headdress for themselves, which is like when you see Shakti, another Jedi Master that's a Togruta in the normal like Skywalker saga era. She has them, and Ahsoka Tano also has them. They're like the cute little beads that you see around their head. So they're actually teeth.
Wonderful. And do you want to give us any backstory on your character? Being a Jedi Master, you've been around a little bit longer than these Padawans.
Wow, you just called me old? That's rude.
Yes, he did. And I think it's because you are old. Respectively, what do I call her?
Ma'am.
Master.
Ma'am.
Actually, in Star Wars, instead of your normal sir, ma'am distinction, everyone is sir.
Oh,
Yeah.
More like knights.
So they're a little
Yeah.
more progressive than we are.
Yeah.
They really are. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Poggers.
Yeah. All of the clones call Ahsoka Tano sir because she is their general. She is their commander. Yep.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
But if you're a Padawan, then similar to military structure, you call the other Jedis by their rank. So,
So Jedi.
Jedi Knight, whoever, or
Master
for me,
Fawn.
it's going to be Master Fawn, Porque, and Master.
That makes sense.
You
Thank
guys
you.
are Padawans.
For having a pronounceable last name.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's not spelled normal, but it sounds
How's
normal.
it spelled?
Phaan.
Wow, that's not what I would have guessed at all.
It's because it's Star Wars and nothing makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole ton of backstory that I feel like is pertinent to this episode, but
Okay.
she basically grew up on Shili for a little bit. Togrutas are known for being very force sensitive in general, but they don't have as high of a midichlorian count. And so
I have a question.
Yes,
What did you just say?
midichlorian. Do I know what it is? Sort of. Want to know why the answer is sort of? Because George Lucas isn't fully sure either sometimes. Sorry, George. But basically, the midichlorians help determine like how force sensitive you are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure
That makes
Joseph
sense
can
in very
explain it
vague
better,
terms.
but
Nope.
I was gonna say.
He's like,
if
nope,
we
you got
want
it.
Time we can just
That's about it. Yeah.
use it for a lore thing.
that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
we could probably talk about it in lore, and that would help.
Okay.
But basically, it's like the way I kind of think about it is like blood cells. Like if you have a high blood cell count, then it means
Congratulations,
something
you're a
about
Jedi.
medical things.
Yep.
Yo, you got lots of blood.
Yo.
You ever think about lightsabers, bro? You got lots of blood in you, bro.
But metachlorians are similar in that, like, the more you have, the higher force sensitivity you probably have.
Okay.
And so Degrudas as a species, they are very force sensitive, but it's more of a cultural thing. So she wasn't discovered in order to like go join the Jedi Order until a little bit later in life. So at that point, she had already killed an Ackle. She was kind of, she was about like 12 when she got found, which is pretty old to be brought to the Jedi Temple. Usually they're babies. And from there, like she just learned and excelled. And now she's getting old, and now she's
Aren't
the
we all?
teacher.
Not me though.
I'm gonna stop talking because you guys are gonna get sick of my voice.
Keep going,
Bye.
please. Tell me more about the Ackle.
It's scurry. I'll show you a picture.
Please do.
Yeah. It's kind of a tiger looking thing.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. All right.
I
So,
look like a tiger. Thank you.
Wesley,
Hi.
tell us about your earliest Star Wars
I
experience.
will. So my earliest, I think, so the earliest Star Wars memory that I can actually remember and recall is I was about 19 or 20. And I was in a, yeah, hey, nuts, right? So like you guys, I mean, you, Joseph, you talked about how your brother would always play like the same movie on repeat.
Yeah.
And like you were like, wow, this is like nuts. Like you play this all the time. And then eventually you were like, wow, this is pretty sick. Like, I like this movie. I had no such experience. I do not have a memory like even to present day. I have no memory of any family member ever playing a Star Wars movie in the home.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The earliest memory I have of getting into Star Wars was I was either 19 or 20, and some work friends were like, oh, you've never seen Star Wars? Well, we got to watch it. And I was in a room full of people, and I was exclusively the only person that hadn't seen Star Wars. I think we were trying to watch them in chronological order, which I believe means starting at movie 4. Like, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but 4, 5, 6 is like 1, 2, 3 chronologically, right?
Like in
Yeah.
order of release or in order
Like chronologically in
events?
order of timeline, like in order of
Oh,
events.
that-
Oh, okay, yeah. So you watched
4, 5, 6.
Oh,
No.
fuck.
Because 4, 5, 6 is
Phantom
before.
Menace. There we go.
Yeah.
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 Was
No,
there
you're-
a child that went yippee a lot?
I couldn't tell you because I was the only one who didn't watch the movie or who hadn't already seen the movie. So everybody else was talking through it. And I got nothing because
Aw.
everybody else was like,
That's
oh, I've seen this
awful.
already. Let's bullshit and like talk and while it's going on. And like, dude, I made an active effort because all my friends like up to this point were like, you haven't seen Star Wars? Like, you got to watch it. Like, it's like the series to follow, right? And I, being moderately nerdy, I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And so that was my genuine like, okay, I'll give it a try moment. Like, everybody wants me to watch it. We had like a date set, right? Like, we were like, hey, this weekend we're gonna get Wesley to like watch this movie. It's gonna be cool. Like, everybody's gonna hang out and we're gonna watch this movie. And then I was like, it was like the room was full of like 15 to 20 people, and I was the only person who hadn't seen the movie. So everybody else who had seen the movie, several people who have seen it multiple times, they were just like talking through it. They didn't actually care. And because like literally if I was not actively reading the subtitles, like I couldn't hear the movie, like whether it be blaster sounds or like engines or like what have you, I couldn't hear it. Like I just heard the ramblings of my coworkers, and that made it hard to watch, right? So I just didn't. And yeah, dude, no one in my family is super into it. I'm not even sure anyone else in my family has seen a Star Wars movie. So it's pretty close to zero on my Star Wars knowledge.
Hey.
Yeah.
That
kinda-
makes me want to
I'm like the guy, right? Like it's like Fallout. I don't know much, and now it's like, oh, Star Wars. What do you know? And I'm like, not much.
Next one is all you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, peep the next game when I'm the DM. It's still very little, but it's a little more than the rest of them. But I'm interested. Like, it sounds cool, and like I've seen. So my Star Wars knowledge, I would say, is like Episode 1 of Star Wars Visions and A New Hope, which I've seen with you guys recently. And I've always been interested in it. Like I've heard like random concepts like parsecs being like a measurement of like distance instead of time, and like I've heard of like
3.2 light years.
there you go. And then that means something to someone, I'm sure, not me. And like other random things like just like random, very like facts that I'm probably heard and forgotten. But I've never like, I mean, the only movie like I've seen a Rogue One, I don't remember it, right? I've seen The Last Jedi, I don't remember it, right?
That's
and
okay.
yeah, so I'm really going into this with like A New Hope, A Last Hope, A New Hope.
A New Hope.
A New Hope and Episode 1 of Visions being my Star Wars knowledge. And like Fallout, I'm gonna be like the person, like both player and character, that's kind of like grew up sheltered, like doesn't really have much of a general knowledge of like the universe as a whole, and is like kind of discovering it as like the game goes on, which I like and I think is really cool. That being said, talking about my character, she kind of grew up in. And
she's a she.
She's a she.
Oh,
yeah, it's gonna be really fun trying to
love
like
it.
trying to spin that voice because I'm a jacked black man, and I am not a female. Marilyn.
I think is how we
Marilyn?
decided
Okay, cool.
to say it.
Yeah, it's gonna be nuts being a jack black dude trying to sound like a Marilyn female. But how she grew up was
What do Marylands look like before we
I'll tell you
get
what
too far away?
because I know that one. They're like generally humanoid. They have like greenish skin normally, and they have like black tattoos that like kind of like symbolize things they've gone through in life. Missy's freaking out. She knows the race I'm talking about. I don't. But they're like, yeah, they have like generally black tattoos that symbolize things they've gone through in life. So it's and they'll either get a new tattoo to like represent things like their trials and tribulations, or new tattoos will show up. And
What?
I said or new tattoos will show up.
Poof. You
right?
heard him.
Is that right? That's right?
Yeah.
Am I full of shit? That's right?
So I think they usually get the tattoos.
Okay.
But
Maybe I'm full of shit.
you being force sensitive,
Maybe they just
Who
show up.
knows?
Oh,
I don't know.
maybe.
I'll wing
Maybe
it. If
that's
I'm
your
wrong,
force power.
suck a dick.
Tattoo. Your force power.
But yeah,
Cool,
that's me.
yeah.
And there's been a couple in like the series that Joseph can name.
Yeah.
And I can't. One of them is that one green one. You know the one. And if you don't, it's okay. I don't either. But so she grew up in like, so like, one more time, say the race name because I need to like settle on it.
Maryland.
That's what we're going with.
Yes.
If we're wrong, shut up. And they like, there's not a lot about them. Like Joseph and I was talking about it earlier, and there's not like a whole lot about them, like lore wise, which is really cool for me as an ignorant player, because Joseph and I can kind of take the idea and like run with it, like run with the emptiness, and make our own story. More so, my own story, which makes sense into this whole canon that I know nothing about. But her parents were like hunter gatherers, right? So they like grew up on a trader planet where they would hunt and sell like furs and like meats of like the animals they hunted. And my character, and I use dice for this thing, but it's Seniect. She discovered her force sensitivity through sensing the animals that her parents hunted, right? So like hunting became more efficient as she became more adept at like being like, oh, they're over here, they're over there, so on and so forth. And eventually like her parents were like the ones selling the most, right? Because the hunting became the most efficient. They had the most product to sell, both in like furs and meats, like as far as that's concerned. And that's how she was discovered, right? Because they like eventually would ask her parents like, hey, how the hell are you outselling, like how do you have so much more product than like all of your competitors? And it's like, oh, have you seen my daughter, bro? Probably not a direct quote, but you get it. But that's how she would like be accepted into like the Jedi, like, the Padawan training, and then later on be like starting her journey. And what she's really like, her core motivations is like understanding of the Force, right? Because eventually she like at a young age she became aware of like this Force, for lack of a better term, that is the Force. But instead, rather than being motivated by like, I'm going to use this power for good or evil, she's more like, I want to know how this works, right? She wants like, I want to know why, like how this acts when like observed, unobserved, when I'm like actively like pursuing it, when it's not being actively pursued, so on and so forth.
So sciencey.
So sciencey, right? Like she wants to know how it works. Like absolutely. Like she wants to know the Force, right? She wants to like it's almost obsessive. Like she wants to know all the properties there is to know about the Force, and that's what motivates her. Yeah, and that's me, and that's Sinyect, and I think it's going to be really fun to play her. I have no idea about Star Wars. Sinyect doesn't have a greater idea about the world outside her world and like the Jedi Temple that she grew up in and trained in. And so it's going to be really cool to once again play the ignorant character that has strong motivations. That's me. That's
Wonderful.
your boy.
Thank you. All right, Stevie.
So, if we're talking about childhood experiences with Star Wars, I remember, and don't make fun of me because
I will.
It might have been a lava-y scene from Lord of the Rings, and I mixed it up with the lava-y fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. But I remember thinking, wow, this is boring as hell. But like kid version of that.
Preach, my queen.
Like at my
bro.
grandma's. And I was like a little kid. Like I wasn't younger than 10, so I guess I was probably like a tween because it was on a television. But like I just remember being like, wow, I wish we could watch something else. And just I did not like it. But my first experience watching it as an adult was, I don't remember what episode it is, but I know that it begins when they're in the city and there's that bounty hunter.
Oh, Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones.
Joseph's favorite.
That's
Yeah.
How
my
do you
favorite.
know?
How
I'm
do
sure
I
there
know?
are many
All right.
episodes where there are cities and bounty hunters.
No, it's
No.
how it
No.
begins. It's
Oh.
really just like, and don't make fun of me, but earlier when you were like, oh, Attack of the Clones, I was like, oh, is that the one where the clones attack?
To be fair, there are a few with clones.
And then I was like,
And they
wow,
attack, I
it
bet.
probably
They do.
is. But yeah, so I started watching that because my friends were like, you don't need to watch episode 1. And
It's blasphemy.
yeah,
Do you?
and so it was super boring again. And I was like, wow, I hate his hair because he's a stupid Padawan braid.
That's fair.
I hate
I have a
it so
question.
much.
Yeah.
And maybe I haven't been paying attention. Whose hair?
Anakin
Rip.
Yeah.
with the little Padawan business, tiny rat
Yeah.
Well, he
tail.
was a Jedi. At
I don't know
that
why I
time, right?
asked. This
No.
means
No.
nothing.
He
to
was
me.
still a Padawan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Trust
So-
me,
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
it was what kept me from continuing watching it.
No, that's right. I'm not disputing
That
the
bad, huh?
stupid braid
Yeah,
thing.
I
Like,
would like to
know.
point out that Obi-Wan looked much better
Yeah.
than Anakin.
Oh,
with
definitely.
Yeah,
braid.
I don't know.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's my Star Wars knowledge.
There we go.
Obi-Wan was a better looking paladin
That's what I've
than
heard.
Anakin as a paladin.
Paladin.
Everyone know. Paladin.
Padawan.
I'm sorry.
No, you were right.
I'm sorry.
They're basically the
Doing
same
nerd
thing. It's
Yeah.
fine.
crossovers. Sorry.
So there was only D20s.
But then my first time watching a full Star Wars movie was actually Rogue One,
Ooh, that's a great
So
one.
which was like, I guess, a really good one to start with.
Yes.
And then I want to say we watched 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I eventually, like, later sat down with Damien and actually watched all of them. And I've watched all of them once. And so there's a lot of information, if you can't tell, that I just mix up. I literally don't remember seeing Qui-Gon at all in the movies.
Oh
Oh
no.
no, he's my
I love
Like,
Qui-Gon.
Me?
Like-
Neither.
I know he exists, and I in my mind, he's a ghost.
I mean, yeah.
But, like, I don't remember anything he says, anything he does. I don't remember any of it.
Just know
Wait.
that he is the best. And that
I vaguely remember. I just got, like, a picture of, like, in my head of him, like, not a ghost. But he's just chilling.
did you
He's
know
in deserty business.
that Liam Neeson, who
Liam
plays
Neeson's?
Qui-Gon Jinn,
Mhm.
was so tall that they had to remake all of the sets for The Phantom Menace because they got him on set and they were like, wow, these trees aren't tall enough. I don't know if that's a direct quote, but I remember reading that
Yeah.
in the
That would be
Guinness
what I
Book of
say.
World Records that I used to get as a kid. And they always had these like, did you know facts? And I would always flip to the Star Wars ones. And that's like the one thing that I got out of reading as a child. So
I mean, do you need anything more?
no, not at all.
Cool.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just really excited about Qui-Gon. You guys, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be so obnoxious.
No, please do, because I have nothing
No.
to contribute to this. I'm like, did you know I know nothing about Star Wars? But if I clicked a button and I'm looking at a map.
Then I watched all of them, and they're pretty good. Like, it's just I think it was just, everyone was like, oh, you haven't watched Star Wars? And I was like, no, I haven't. But then I was like, kind of bummed that I put it off for so long.
That's fair.
And I still don't know very much about it. And I've watched a little bit of
Go on.
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. But very spotty. I just I'll get into it sometimes when Damien is watching. And then I won't. I'll miss an entire arc or like half an arc. I don't know what happened with Savage.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
I still don't know yet either.
Oh.
I haven't gotten to see any finale with him yet. But
Is
I
Clone
just-
Wars on, not sponsored, Disney Plus?
It
Yeah.
is.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
easy. I
You
have an
should watch
account.
it.
My friends made me an account to watch stuff on. And I've yet to watch anything.
There you go.
But they made me an account on their, and they gave me the username and
Yeah,
password.
you could
It's all
literally
good.
And
watch
me,
all of the movies.
being the
also.
asshole friend, hasn't used it yet.
Clone Wars. That's where you were saying you
Yeah.
left off.
That's my lot. Like, and I've watched The Mandalorian.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
but
I
other
be
than that-
honest though?
It's
I
like a
literally only
Western.
care about the Mandalorian.
I've
Like,
seen two,
Grogu
count them,
can
two
kick
random
some.
episodes of the Mandalorian. That's
Grogu's-
including season 1 and 2.
Cute.
Oh no.
But
Two?
That's,
He
you
was
say?
cute till he started eating things.
yeah.
The Mandalorian?
Eating like
Or like
Yep.
the little Yoda?
You'll never know until you
I
watch
guess
it.
I won't.
No, it's the little Yoda. His
He
name-
eats- I mean, I guess that makes
Yeah.
sense. but-
endangered
It's awful.
species, like the
Are we
last
all?
of their
Yeah.
kind.
He eats like frog eggs.
Frags?
Yeah.
Frags.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
That's gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like almost as big as his
Bibbidi-bobbidi.
head.
Hop.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's all I have as far as like my experience with Star Wars. I've not
Okay.
ever been like a big, huge fan, but I'm not like not a fan.
Like me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So tell us about your character.
Ooh, my character's name is Daisy, because I don't want to pronounce her real name. But
What is
Daisy is her nickname because she has yellow eyes and white skin. She's a
makes
Twi'lek,
sense.
which is like a humanoid type. They have different colors of skin. I don't remember what colors they normally have.
Pretty much everything.
I think
Yeah.
that I know that there's like blue and purple and red, but white's not exactly a common color, but that's just what she got. And they have Leiku.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, they have Leiku instead of hair, which is just kind of like two tentacles chilling on their head.
When you say it like
Yeah.
that, it's like, ooh. But
Yeah.
that's really like the
It's
best
like-
description
it
of
looks
it.
like pigtails,
yeah,
like pigtail tentacles, and
Yeah.
it's
that's
cute
that's
on the
cute. Yeah,
on the girls, but like on the dudes, it's ugly
It's
because they got
terrible
butt
on the
heads.
dudes.
I was gonna say they have like butt
They got-
chin heads.
Oh, I think that's why I didn't want to watch Star Wars either, because the dude with the boobs on his head. And I remember thinking he was ugly. I was like, wow, I hate him. I don't like looking at him.
Bib Fortuna,
Probably.
the one
Probably.
in Jabba's palace.
Probably. I
Okay,
think
I'm
so.
sorry. I know.
I don't know. But I
I-
remember thinking, wow, that guy's ugly. Like, not. And Jabba, I didn't like looking at him either.
No one
so,
likes looking at him.
Yeah, I
Jabba's-
didn't like looking at ugly things.
Wesley, he's
'cause
a
I
big
was
like
kid and I was
slug.
honest.
Okay,
Jabba the
good.
Hutt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Daisy was actually born into slavery. Her mom was like I don't know what she did. She was
A slave.
a laborer. I don't know what. I know they're Trandoshans, but I don't know what the planet's called.
It's called Trandosha.
Of course it is.
Yeah, it's all good.
On just a slave on Trandosha. And eventually, because of her white skin, she was taken because it's more of a rare thing, and they're just like, wow, looks cool. She was actually used as like an acrobatic. I don't know what to call it, but
A performer, I guess.
acrobatic performer. Yeah, it's in a circus type entertainment thing. So the Jedi at some point caught wind of like that this was going on, and they eventually like smuggled her out. And so now she is just really grateful to the Jedi that rescued her, and she wants to become the best Jedi that she can and help those who can't help themselves, because like without the Jedi coming in doing that exactly that, she would have still just been a slave, and who knows what she would have been doing right now.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, I am very excited to get started, and we will meet back up for session 1.
Sounds good.
All right.